And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
One of the big games I heard about this year, I heard a lot about it on the internet, was Endeavor. Now, I hadn't really thought much about it. I heard about it, heard it was a great game. Lots of people played it, just never really picked it up. Finally got a copy of it a month or so ago and was able to play it several times. But the reason I hadn't snagged it up immediately upon hearing about it was simply because the theme was about shipping and spreading resources and, really, can't we come up with new themes? That being said, Endeavor is actually quite a well put together game. With some other theme, I might actually love it. As it is, I merely like it. I think it's very interesting and wonder if it had come out years ago that it might be a really huge hit. As it is now, lots of people like it because it's a very tight game. I just started finding it started to feel a little bit samey after a while. So before we do anything else, let's take a look at it and shut that door. Each player has a player board that they will be using over the course of a game. It has 4 tracks on it, and then we have construction, culture, finance, and government or politics. And once the game starts, bricks, pots, coins, and shields. That's what you'll end up calling them as the game goes by. And as you get points in these different things, you'll be moving these across. And if you look closely, let's focus up here, for example, on the shield. At the beginning of the round, once you move it up to 1, nothing happens. But once you move it up to 2, you can see that you can now have 2 cards plus a slavery card in front of you. Once it gets up to 4, you basically go to the next level, then 7, and then once you go up to 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, you do well. And at the end of the game, that's going to be points for you, and the points are whatever the shield is. So if I got 3 at the end of the game, I would only have 2 points. If I got 5 at the end of the game, I'd only have 4 points. So you can see once you get over to 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15, that you get quite a few points at the end of the game. And so players are going to be doing their best to move over all 4 of these counters as far as they can during the course of a game. This is the main board, and man, I'll tell you, setting those counters up, and you have just exactly enough of those counters to put out. So don't lose one of them. But as you can see, if we would focus up on several of the counters, they are the same symbols as are on the different player tracks. And so you will be trying to get these counters. Every time you take one, you'll be able to move the counter track over one. And so getting these counters in various ways during the course of the game is one of the goals. But you'll also be wanting to get different cards. There will be different cards. For example, this card here is a great card because it gives you 4 culture movement on your track. And there's just different cards that you can use over the course of the game. But the game is all about just some basic structure on how it works. The very first thing players do on each turn is they get to choose a building. Now there are a whole pile of buildings included in the game, and I'm not going to show you every single one of them. But at the beginning of the game, the size of the building they can take is determined by the track, their construction track, and how many bricks. So most players can only take a 1-brick building at the beginning. Then there's 3 different buildings of each level. So there's 3 1-brick buildings, 3 2-brick buildings, 3 different kinds of each one, although there's multiple of each one. And so players, once they move their level up to 2 bricks, they can still take a 1-brick building. But they're going to take this 1-brick building and put it on their player board. Each player starts with 1 building already on their player, the colonial house, but once you take your next building, you put it here. You have to take a building each turn, so you can see there's only space for 7 buildings to be added, so there's 7 turns in the course of the game. And as the game progresses, your buildings might get bigger and better, or maybe they'll stay the same, and you can buy whatever building you want. Some buildings, for example the bank here, if you look down here, has 2 coins on it, so I'll be able to move my coin track over 2 when I build that building. After everyone has built 1 building, then players are going to get people or colonists to use in these buildings. This might remind you a little bit of Puerto Rico, but for example, we will look at the track here of white, and if you see here, white has 2, they get 2 colonists up here, according to their culture. So they'll take 2 colonists, and they will place those colonists in their harbor. Then, after everyone has done that, if they have any people in buildings, they can pull those people out of buildings depending on where their income is. Now this doesn't
make a lot of sense thematically, and people always, I mean, to me it seems like it's a very simple concept, but I've always had a bit of a time explaining it to people. So here, let's say their culture, their finances over here, they can pull 2 people off, they get to pull some off. That's an important thing, because otherwise your buildings get clogged, and you want to be able to use them again. And I already mentioned what the shield one was for, is for having cards in front of you. After that is the action phase. And in the action phase, players simply are going to put a person in a building and take the action of that building. They can also, if they happen to have taken a tile previously that allows them to take an action, they can use that tile to take whatever action the tile shows. There are only a few actions. Let me show what they are briefly. One of the actions is to put a colonist on the board. You need to have an extra one in your harbor. When you play it, this is what the Colonial House lets you do in other buildings also. You simply pick a city on the board and put your guy on it. You get the tile, whether it might make one of your tracks increase, and that's a great thing. Now, what's neat about this game is if you take 2 cities, and in between those 2 cities, there's a control point, you get that tile also. And at the end of the game, that's going to be worth an extra point for controlling that area. So that's one of the things you can do, is take a city. Now, you can only take a city in an open region. In the beginning of the game, the European and Mediterranean is the only open region, but as the game progresses, the other 6 regions may open up also. Another thing you do is shipping. Shipping means you go to one of these regions that has not yet been opened up, and you go to the shipping track there, and you will send another colonist from your harbor to the farthest point on the shipping track and put him there. Now, you're going to want to do that because after everybody has done that in each area, whoever has the most people on a shipping area is going to get the governor card of that area. Remember those cards I showed you earlier? Well, there's a stack of them on each area, and one on the top of each stack is a governor card. Governor card is great. As you can see, this one here for North America has 2 shields, a coin, and that crosshairs means a victory point. You want to get that and put that on your board, and whoever has the most shipping tokens in the North American area, I know I'm showing you India, whoever has the most tokens here is going to win. So once all of these tokens are filled up, all 7 there, whoever has the most gets the top governor card, and that area is now open for people to put their folks in the cities there also. Another action you can do is trade, in which you take a card at the top of a pile. You can only do that once the governor card has been taken, and to do it you need at least the amount of tokens shown down here in the corner of the card in that area, whether they be on shipping or on city. So here white has 3 tokens, so he could take this card, or if this card was at the top of the pile, he could take this one, or he could take this card. He needs 0 tokens, and the bigger the number is, the better the tokens. There's a vast difference between the 0 here, which gives you 2 tokens, and the 4, which gives you 5 victory points at the end of the game. Players can only have a certain amount of cards. Now, one of the decks here is a slavery deck. You can take those, it's an extra card, but at a certain point, the slaves will be freed, and at the end of the game, you lose points for using slavery. This may actually have an impact on whether or not you want to get the game. Some people have a problem with using slavery. Honestly, you don't need to use a slavery deck at all to play the game, but it can give you a quick boost, although you'll lose points at the end because of it. And then the final thing you can do to other players is you can basically attack them and take them out of a city, put your token in instead, but you also have to give up an extra token. So doing it can be very useful, but can also be very dangerous. At the end of the game, you get points. I already talked to you about points from your tracks on your player board, but you will also get points for every city you control and every control point you have. You also might get some points for some cities. For example, this one over here in the corner has no control points attached to it, but it's worth 2 victory points. And then, of course, many cards will have victory points, and there's a way for you to get victory points on your board if you haven't used what's called a free governor, and you can play the game to find out more about that. So the game takes place over 7 turns. It's very simple. It even provides you with some double-sided tokens that you can use to help count up victory points at the end. Even all the resource tokens have a victory point on the other side, and that's there simply to help you add up the points at the end of the game. Good points about the game. Very simple, very easy, plays very quickly. Each game is played differently, very little randomness, only the initial setup is random. Everything after that, players choose. The different buildings, hard choices, fun in that regard. I would call this elegant.
But the disadvantages of the game, the things that I'm not too keen on, is one person can really help someone else. You can put a token down in the shipping lane, give someone else the governor card, and just to get yourself one measly little thing, you can really sway the balance in this game. That can really be a problem. Also, it seems to scale very oddly. If you play with 3 players, you don't open up half the shipping lanes. If you play with 5, you open them all up. It's just, I mean, there's no rules for scaling it. I guess it's maybe not a bad feature, but it certainly means that a 3-player game feels very different than a 5-player game. The full 5-player game, in my opinion, is the best. And then, of course, there's the theme. I mean, it's yes, hooray, shipping to other lands. Well, but if you like this kind of game, you don't usually care about the theme anyway. It was a very well put together game, and there are going to be people who really, really enjoy it. I won't say that I don't enjoy it. It's fun. It's just that I really see the fun fading just a bit each play, and I think in 3 years I'm not going to be touching this one at all.
Thanks for joining us today. For more written, audio, and video reviews, as well as the #1 board game podcast, check out the website at www.thedicetower.com. Until then, this is Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.